Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I've hiked and camped all over the Rockies for years, alone and with friends, but nothing in all that time prepared me for what happened that September night. It was early fall, the kind of crisp, sharp air that smells like pine needles and old smoke. I'd set up my tent near a trailhead that was barely used, miles from the nearest road. The kind of place where you can hear your own heartbeat if you listen closely enough. After dinner, I grabbed my headlamp and decided to take a short hike to stretch my legs. The trail was quiet, so quiet that every snap of a twig sounded deafening. Normally, I like hiking alone at night. There's a rhythm to it, a strange comfort in the dark. But that night, the rhythm felt wrong. About a mile in, I thought I heard it, a soft, almost hesitant whisper. My name, Arslan. I stopped, frozen, straining my ears. There was nothing, just the wind in the branches, right? I laughed nervously. It's the wind, just the wind, I muttered to myself. But then it came again, louder, closer. My pulse spiked. That whisper had a weight to it, an urgency I couldn't place. Not playful, not teasing, desperate, almost pleading. My stomach twisted. I turned back toward camp, trying to keep my voice steady. Hello, I called, though I didn't expect an answer. Silence, just my own breath, ragged in my ears. And then I saw it, a shadow moving between the trees, always at the edge of my vision, never fully there. It mirrored my pace perfectly, keeping just far enough away that I couldn't get a clear look. I tried to convince myself it was an animal, maybe a deer or a coyote, but the shape was wrong. Too tall, too human. I started running. My flashlight bounced over rocks and gnarled roots, every step loud in the still night. Behind me, the whispering grew louder, closer, almost drowning out my thoughts. Arslan. I tripped on a root, sprawling onto the dirt. Pain shot up my arm and knee. My flashlight rolled a few feet away, illuminating the forest floor in a thin cone of light. And then, nothing. Dead silence. Not a whisper, not a shadow, just the whispering echoes in my mind. I lay there, heart hammering, waiting, listening. The night stretched on like it would never end. I didn't move until the first pale light of dawn seeped through the trees. My flashlight was lying exactly where it had fallen. I crawled back to my tent, trembling. That's when I saw the footprints. Not mine. Large, heavy, and circling my tent as if it had been inspecting me while I slept. They stopped just at the edge, perfectly spaced, and then nothing. No trail back into the woods. I packed up immediately, leaving everything behind. I didn't look back. I've never returned. Even now, months later, I sometimes hear it. Not outside, but in my mind. A whisper, soft and low, calling my name. Arslan. I don't know who or what was out there that night, and I don't think I want. Some trails are meant to stay empty. Some voices are meant to stay unheard. But the memory lingers. That shadow, that whisper, the feeling of being followed by something that was always just out of reach. I've hiked hundreds of trails since then, but none feel safe. Not the Rockies, not the Appalachians, not anywhere. Because somewhere out there, in the dark, waiting just beyond sight. There's a voice that knows your name, and it won't stop calling. That night taught me something I wish I hadn't learned. The wilderness isn't empty. It's listening, and sometimes it answers. I never camp alone anymore, and I never, ever hike at night. But sometimes when the wind rustles through the pines, I swear I hear it again. Arslan. And it makes me wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't run? Story 2. I've always loved camping. There's something about the crackle of a fire, the smell of pine, the isolation that makes me feel alive. That weekend, my friends and I decided to head into the Smoky Mountains. We picked a clearing off the main trail, a spot so quiet it felt like the forest itself was holding its breath. I volunteered to build the fire. It's always been my thing, the one part of camping that gives me a sense of control. We set up our tents just as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. By 10 p.m., everyone else had retreated to their tents. I stayed behind, poking at the fire, letting the logs settle into a perfect glow. Alone, the forest felt different, peaceful, yes, but also aware. I leaned back against a log and let the warmth wash over me. Then I heard it. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a deer caught in the underbrush, but the sound made my stomach twist. It was a scream, low and raw, unmistakably human, filled with pain. I froze. My first thought was that one of my friends was trying to prank me. Very funny. I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Silence answered me. The fire crackled, but nothing else moved. Then the scream came again, closer, louder, and desperate, like someone had been running for miles and had finally collapsed, calling out for help. I tried to tell myself it was an animal, a fox, a coyote, anything that made sense. But no animal could make a sound like that. It was wrong, bone deep wrong. Suddenly, the fire erupted. Not a little flare, not a gust from the wind. Something shot the flames upward, hotter than I'd ever felt. I stumbled back, the heat burning my face. Logs popped and spit sparks into the dark. That's when I saw it. It was standing just at the edge of the tree-line. Thin, impossibly thin, with skin that looked stretched too tight over bone. Its eyes glowed, a pale green, and it stared at me as if it had been waiting. The air around it shifted. The sound of that scream wasn't coming from it. It was coming from the space around it, like it was bending the world into its pain. I froze. Every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't look away. The fire flared again, as if responding to the thing. The smell hit me first, a sharp, acrid smell like burnt pine mixed with something foul like charred meat. I gagged. I grabbed my flashlight and shone at the figure, but the beam passed through it, leaving only the smell and the sound. The scream grew louder, sharper, closer, until I could feel it in my chest. My friends' voices echoed from their tents, calling me, confused, but I couldn't move. Then it shifted, not like it walked, not like it ran, like it slid through the darkness, folding space around it. I caught a glimpse of a hand, thin as twigs, claws long enough to scrape bark off the trees. That was enough. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I had everyone packed, flashlights swinging, hearts pounding. We tore through the trees, adrenaline burning through our veins. By the time we reached the car, we were shaking, breathless, eyes wide. I didn't look back at the clearing. I couldn't. Hours later, at a gas station back on the main road, I lit a cigarette and finally tried to make sense of what had happened. My friends laughed nervously, but none of us spoke about the eyes, the scream, the fire. We didn't have words for it. Even now, days later, I can still smell it. The acrid smoke, the pine, and something else. Something sick and raw that doesn't belong anywhere but there. I've gone back to camping since then, but never alone. And I never build a fire after dark, not even for a minute, because I know it's still out there, waiting. And if the fire flares just right, it might scream again. Right for me. Story 3. I have been looking forward to this trip for months. The Adirondacks in late October promised crisp air, golden leaves, and, most importantly, solitude. I left the main trail hours behind me, trudging through the dark forest until I found a small clearing that felt almost too perfect to be true. Flat ground, a faint breeze that rustled the treetops, and silence so complete it pressed against my ears. I pitched my tent, arranged my gear, and sat for a while, watching the stars pierce the sky like tiny shards of glass. The forest was mine for the night. At least I thought it was. Sleep came easily, or maybe I wanted it badly enough to ignore the creeping unease that sometimes accompanies being entirely alone. The crickets whispered, and somewhere far off, a branch snapped. Nothing threatening, just the forest breathing around me. That's what I told myself. At exactly 2:07 a.m., I woke. At first, I thought it was the wind, or maybe a dream bleeding into reality. Then I heard it, soft, deliberate, and impossibly close. A whisper, barely audible, right outside my tent. Move. My heart lurched. I froze, straining to listen, telling myself it had to be an animal. Maybe a raccoon, maybe a fox, but no, it was human. It had to be. The whisper came again, more urgent this time, like someone shaking the edges of the world to see if I would respond. Move. I sat up slowly, my hands gripping the tent flap. My mind screamed at me to stay calm, to rationalize. Probably some idiot camper playing a prank. But something about the tone, the stillness that followed each whisper, made rationality feel hollow. My pulse was hammering so loud I thought the sound might give me away. I unzipped the tent, just a crack. The beam of my flashlight pierced the darkness, shaking in my hand. That's when I saw it. Another tent, about 20 feet from mine, perfectly set up, perfectly normal, or as normal as anything could look at 2 a.m. in a remote forest. My stomach dropped. I had checked the maps, the park regulations. Nobody was supposed to be out here. Nobody. And inside that tent, a figure, sitting cross-legged, completely still, staring at me. I could see the outline, almost human, but the stillness was wrong. The kind of stillness that makes your skin crawl because you know it's not just sleep. It was watching me, waiting, breathing silently in the night. I backed away slowly, heart in my throat. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to run, to never look back. I flipped the flashlight toward it, expecting movement, but nothing. Just darkness where the figure had been. My rational brain tried to tell me it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the moon, anything, but my gut told me otherwise. I packed in silence, fumbling with zippers and poles, praying I wouldn't wake whatever it was. Every rustle of leaves sounded like a step, every whisper of wind like a hiss in my ear. I wanted to run, but the forest seemed endless, swallowing sound and distance alike. I stuffed the last of my gear into my pack and made a beeline for the trailhead. Morning was worse. The forest had returned to normal, the leaves glittering in sunlight, birds singing like nothing had happened. I forced myself to turn back to the clearing, maybe just to reassure myself, maybe out of some sick curiosity. The other tent was gone, just gone. No footprint in the mud, no disturbed leaves, no sign it had ever been there. My hands trembled as I examined the spot. It was just ground like I had imagined the whole thing. I haven't returned since. I don't know what I saw. A camper? A ghost? Something older than the park itself. Something patient and quiet. I can't explain it, and that uncertainty is worse than any explanation I could come up with. Sometimes at night, I swear I hear whispers when the wind presses against my windows. A soft, deliberate voice saying move, and I know if I ever hear it again, I'll listen. Because I learned one thing in those woods: some tents aren't yours, and some things are better left unseen.